Namaste, Dhanavat Pranam. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Shradev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Canto 1, Chapter 3, Text 43. Krishne Svadhamo Bhagate Dharma Jnanadi Bisaha Kalo Nasta Drisham Esha Purāna Dunhodita. This Bhagavad Purāna is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purāna. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna has eternal dham, or abode, where he eternally enjoys himself with his eternal associates and paraphernalia, and his eternal abode is a manifestation of his internal energy, whereas the material world is a manifestation of his external energy. When he descends to the material world, he displays himself with all paraphernalia, and his internal potency, which is called Atma Maya. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he descends by his own potency, Atma Maya. His form, name, fame, paraphernalia, abode, etc. are not therefore creations of matter. He descends to reclaim the fallen souls and to re-establish codes of religion which are directly enacted by him. Except for God, no one can establish the principles of religion. Either he or a suitable person empowered by him can dictate the codes of religion. Real religion means to know God, our relation with him, and our duties in relation with him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving this material body. The conditioned souls who are entrapped by the material energy hardly know all these principles of life. Most of them are like animals engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. They are mostly engaged in sense enjoyment under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, or salvation. They are still more blind in the present age of quarrel of Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal addition of the animals. They have nothing to do with spiritual knowledge or godly religious life. They are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the jurisdiction of the subtle mind, intelligence, or ego. But they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, and material prosperity. They can risk their lives to become a dog or hog just after leaving the present body, for they have completely lost sight of the ultimate aim of life. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared before us just a little prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga, and he returned to his eternal home practically at the commencement of Kali Yuga. While he was present, he exhibited everything by his different activities. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita specifically and eradicated all pretentious principles of religiosity. And prior to his departure from this material world, he empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the messages of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And thus both the Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam are like torchbearers for the blind people of this age. In other words, if men in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam, and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the summum bonum of life, Lord Sri Krishna personified. We must therefore accept Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as a direct representation of Lord Krishna. One who can see Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam can see also Lord Sri Krishna in person. They are identical. 44. Tatra kirtayato vipra viprarsher buri tejasa aham chadhyagamam tatra nivishtas anugrahat soham vasravayishyami yatadhitam yatamati. O learned Brahmanas, when Shukadev Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus by his mercy I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. Purport. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Sri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam if one has heard it from a self-realized great soul like Shukadev Goswami. One cannot, however, learn Bhagavatam from a bogus hired reciter whose aim of life is to earn money out of such resuscitation and employ the earning in sex indulgence. No one can learn Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam who is associated with persons engaged in sex life. That is the secret of learning Bhagavatam. Nor can one learn Bhagavatam from one who interprets the text by his mundane scholarship. One has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Shukadev Goswami, and no one else, if one at all wants to see Lord Sri Krishna in the pages. That is the process, and there is no alternative. Sutta Goswami is a bona fide representative of Shukadev Goswami because he wants to present the message which he received from the great learned Brahman. Shukadev Goswami presented Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father, and so also Sutta Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he heard it from Shukadev Goswami. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word nivista means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Sri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, third chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Chapter 4. The appearance of Sri Narada. Text 1. Vyasa uvacha iti bruvanam samstuya muninam drigha satninam vridhakula pati sutam bhavricha saunako bravit. Vyasadeva said, on hearing Sutta Goswami speak thus, Saunaka Muni, who was the elderly learned leader of all the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Sutta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Purport. In a meeting of learned men, when there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualifications of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Sri Saunaka Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Sri Sutta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam exactly as he heard it from Shukadev Goswami, and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should out of vanity attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous acharya, and at the same time he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Saunaka, could estimate the value of the speaker, Sri Sutta Goswami, simply by his uttering Yatadhitam and Yatamati. And therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original acharya. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam, so that real purpose can be served without difficulty. Unless this situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation for extraneous purposes is useless labor, both for the speaker and for the audience. Text 2. Saunaka uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Bharatam Vara Katam Bhagavatim Punyam Yadaha Bhagavanchuka. Saunaka said, O Suta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukadeva Goswami. Purport. Suta Goswami is twice addressed herein by Sanaka Goswami out of great joy because he and the members of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Sukadeva Goswami. They were not interested in hearing it from a bogus person who would interpret in his own way to suit his own purpose. Generally, the so-called Bhagavatam reciters are either professional readers or so-called learned impersonalists who cannot enter into the transcendental personal activities of the Supreme Person. Such impersonalists twist some meanings out of Bhagavatam to suit and support impersonalist views, and the professional readers at once go to the 10th canto to mis-explain the most confidential part of the Lord's pastimes. Neither of these reciters are bona fide persons to recite Bhagavatam. Only one who is prepared to present Bhagavatam in the light of Shukadeva Goswami, and only those who are prepared to hear Shukadeva Goswami and his representative are bona fide participants in the transcendental discussion of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Text 3. Kasmin yuge pravritteyam stane vakena hetuna kuta sanchodita Krishna kritavan samhitam muni. In what period and at what place was this first begun? And why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? Purport. Because Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the special contribution of Srila Vyasadeva, there are so many inquiries by the learned Saunaka Muni. It was known to them that Srila Vyasadeva had already explained the text of the Vedas in various ways up to the Mahabharata for the understanding of less intelligent women, Sudras, and fallen members of the family of twice-born men. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is transcendental to all of them because it has nothing to do with anything mundane. So the inquiries are very intelligent and relevant. Text 4. Tasya putro mahayogi samhadrinir vikalpaka ekantamatir unidro gudho mudha iveyate. His, Vyasadev's son, was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. Purport. Srila Sukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul, and thus he remained always alert, not to be trapped by the illusory energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, this alertness is very lucidly explained. The liberated soul and the conditioned soul have different engagements. The liberated soul is always engaged in the progressive path of spiritual attainment, which is something like a dream for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul cannot imagine the actual engagements of the liberated soul. While the conditioned soul thus dreams about spiritual engagements, the liberated soul is awake. Similarly, the engagement of a conditioned soul appears to be a dream for the liberated soul. A conditioned soul and a liberated soul may apparently be on the same platform, but factually they are differently engaged, and their attention is always alert, either in sense enjoyment or in self-realization. The conditioned soul is absorbed in matter, whereas the liberated soul is completely indifferent to matter. This indifference is explained as follows. Text 5. Dristvanu rishim atmajam apyanagnam devyo hriya paridadhur nasutasya chitram tadviksha prichati munau jagadustavasti stripumbida natu sutasya vivikta drishte. While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth, although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them, made no distinction between male and female, but the sage made such distinctions. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 5.18, it is said that the learned sage looks equally on a learned and gentle Brahmana, a Chandala, dog-eater, a dog or a crow due to his spiritual vision. Srila Shukadeva Goswami attained that stage. Thus he did not see male or female, he saw all living entities in different dress. The ladies who were bathing could understand the mind of a man simply by studying his demeanor. Just as by looking at a child one can understand how innocent he is, Shukadeva Goswami was a young boy, 16 years old, and therefore all the parts of his body were developed. He was naked also, and so were the ladies. But because Shukadeva Goswami was transcendental to sex relations, he appeared very innocent. The ladies, by their special qualifications, could sense this at once, and therefore they were not very concerned about him. But when his father passed, the ladies quickly dressed. The ladies were exactly like his children or grandchildren, yet they reacted to the presence of Vyasadeva according to the social custom, because Srila Vyasadeva played the part of a householder. A householder has to distinguish between male and female, otherwise he cannot be a householder. One should therefore attempt to know the distinction between body and soul without any attachment for male and female. As long as such distinction is there, one should not try to become a sannyasi like Shukadeva Goswami. At least theoretically, one must be convinced that a living entity is neither male nor female. The outward dress is made of matter by material nature to attract the opposite sex and thus keep one entangled in material existence. A liberated soul is above this perverted distinction. He does not distinguish between one living being and another. For him, they are all one and the same spirit. The perfection of the spiritual vision is the liberated stage, and Srila Shukadeva Goswami attained that stage. Srila Vyasadeva was also in the transcendental stage, but because he was in the householder's life, he did not pretend to be a liberated soul as a matter of custom. Thus ends our reading for today. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to our Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. All glories to Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. All glories to Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Nitai Gora Hari Hari Bol.